Reverend Kimberleigh Jordan is an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ. I met her for this interview at the Riverside Church in New York City, where she serves as director of worship. Could you begin by describing the time and the place that you were born into?
So I was born in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Raleigh was quite segregated then, so I lived on the African-American side of town, and we went to African-American church, and I think I might have met my first white person when I went to kindergarten, possibly. So it was that, although legally all the segregation had fallen by that point.
What role did religion play when you were little?
Very important. It was our primary community. So I was born and raised in a church named St. Paul African Methodist Episcopal Church in Raleigh, and it was a church that was founded in 1848 by enslaved people who left the Methodist church up the street when they weren't allowed to worship as they wanted, and literally brick by brick built the church in the evenings after they got off of their, enslaved jobs that they were doing. That church was very powerful in my life. The people there who very much raised me, who taught me, my Sunday school teachers, our pastors and preachers, huge impact on my life. And it was a beautiful place too. It also taught me about the beauty of religious community.
When did you start dancing?
When I turned 5, I started dance lessons because I think, as the family lore went, there were 2 reasons. One is that I was a bit schlumpy and my feet didn't seem very strong, and my grandmother was afraid I'd have flat feet, and she thought it was a good idea for me to get involved in dance. And then the other reason was because she wanted to dance when she was a girl, and it was completely considered improper for girls to dance. And so she was never really allowed to dance as a child, and so she was my greatest supporter. Growing up, she'd go to dance classes with me. She'd sew stuff for our company, for our dance company. She would just go watch rehearsals. She was a huge supporter.
So that's what brought you to New York?
Yeah.
First?
Yes, exactly, to study. I came initially for a summer dance intensive and studied at the Alvin Ailey studio for a summer, and then left, went back to college for a year, and then came back and studied at the Dance Theater of Harlem in their professional training program.
And then what drew you to study theology?
In those young adult years in New York, I was, attempting to locate myself and place myself here and find what was familiar, but also find what was new. And so I, that way, eventually wandered into Riverside Church by way of Dr. Forbes. I heard Dr. Forbes preach in Harlem at Convent Avenue Baptist Church, where I had been attending, and just had to hear him preach more. And he's very artistic, and so at a point, maybe 6 months in, I was taking a choreography class, and I'd started sketching out dance pieces in the nave. And so I talked to him about it. I said, I could just imagine that dance could happen here. And he got really enthusiastic and interested, and he recommended me to Reverend Sally Norris, and she kind of oversaw my first choreographic piece here, which was a Palm Sunday piece here in this nave, which was a 2-part piece. So when I did go to seminary, which was a few years later, I went following that same trail. And so my time at Union was, absolutely the study of theology, but I also had dance classes.
How do you see the relationship between the two? How do you choreograph an exegesis?
Yeah, well, so much of faith and spirituality is what's lived in the body. A lot of faith has invited us to consider ourselves outside of flesh in an alternative space elsewhere. But to dance, and to dance within biblical texts and to dance within theological ideas, is to not be in that elsewhere, but to be right here in the body.
What's the role of the cross for you?
It's an important part of my spiritual life. It was the instrument upon which Jesus died, but the cross is also remembered, I think, because he, as Emmanuel, as God with us, suffered in his authentic body, and so connects us with suffering now. And so it constantly pulls me back in my faith to be in solidarity with people who are suffering.
So the cross and salvation are talked about together. What does it mean to you to be saved?
That changes from time to time, but my faith is always a part of what's saving my life today, and sometimes it's my faith and jazz, sometimes it's my faith and dance, sometimes it's my faith and the joy of the gift of my children. So it's different things, but what is saving my life on a day can mean something different. So there's the evangelical liturgical moment of getting saved or salvation, but then there's more growth that has to happen, and so that's why we always have to pull forward into the future of our life and of our living.
Let's talk about life. If Jesus came to bring abundant life, and people have different ways of framing what that's talking about. How do you understand abundant life?
I find for myself with that text, I'm always unpacking it. And I find that the challenge is that my abundant life cannot foreclose on someone else's abundant life. My biggest challenge from day to day is to live in a way that my abundant life supports the abundant life of others and does not foreclose upon the abundance of others.
Some will say, well, Jesus died on the cross, so we're saved from hell for heaven, right? What would you say we're saved from and for?
I think we're saved from emptiness. We are saved for companionship with Jesus. And that's profoundly moving to me. I really think that we are saved to literally walk our lives with Jesus.
In last year's Trinity Institute conference, Joan Chittister said that in a world that's created by evolution, we're called to be co-creators with God. Do you see the Christian faith as evolving or as something that's sort of set in forever?
Neither. I am wary of a modernist approach that we're on a trail where society and civilization get better as we move through history, and so we're aiming for this point where all will be well and everything will be good for everybody. If we were on a modernist direction, racism would be over, sexism would be over, it would be done, because certainly the work has been done to end those things, but yet we're circling, we're still circling.
Are you optimistic? What are your hopes for the church?
There's the discrepancy between the term optimism and the term hope. If I think it's Cornel West who said, if optimism looks at the situation that looks dire and says, well, things have worked out in the past, so I suspect they're going to work out in the future. That's a kind of an optimistic approach to life, whereas hope looks at the situation that is dire and says things look very, very bad, and I can't see any evidence that things are going to work out, and yet I will hope, I will trust in my faith. So I live in a place of hope and don't have much in the way of optimism, and it's really faith-based.